Hi, Sara Levin, the Artful Inker. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I've got a card for you using the Daisy Lane stamp set. So let's take a quick look at the card. Here we are. Let's walk you through the techniques so that you can make your own. Let me set this aside and let's get started. Start with a piece of Whisper White. And I have a silicone craft mat and my sponge brayer, some lovely lipstick. I've torn a piece of text weight paper that I'm going to use for a mask. It's got an uneven edge, so I thought that might that'll give us that interesting edge to the brayering. And then I just want a piece of scrap paper here to pounce my brayer on. So I'm going to start by laying some ink down on my silicone craft mat and ink up the brayer. Okay, then I want to move this down just a smidge and give it a roll and start and this may take you a couple of minutes. I want to we're looking for a deep rich color up here in the upper left. Be sure that you start off your piece of cardstock and work all the way across, and you'll want to be sure that your brayer is making a full rotation and that you're not just rolling back and forth in the same spot. Pay attention to that as well when you're picking up more ink on your brayer. Make sure you're making a full rotation and not just adding all the ink in one spot. Now, as I worked, I realized that I had some lines forming, and to get rid of those, I changed the direction that I was brayering so that I brought more ink across from a slightly different diagonal, and that seemed to smooth out the lines. So if that's happening on your project, change the direction that you're brayering and see if you too can bring that ink together. It's almost an ombre look is just about done, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next piece of this card. Okay, and that looks like we're finished with the background. Before we set this aside, I'm going to take my spritzer and put a little bit of water in my hand and then kind of flick on will react with the ink and leave distressed dots when it dries on the background. And I'm flicking as opposed to using a brush because the splatter from the flick is less uniform in size and distribution. Okay, let's set this aside. Next, we're going to use the Daisy Lane stamp set. I'm going to use this medium daisy and some Whisper White and Call Me Clover ink. And let's just stamp several daisies so that we have them available to punch. I think these will Okay. Now let's punch these. I've got the medium daisy punch, and I'll punch those out and be right back. Then let's stack these up at a slight offset in pairs of 2. Next, I'm going to cut a die cut strip using the stitched nested labels, and I've already cut one label with the second largest die, and then I'm going to reposition it and hold it with some washi tape and cut it down to the size that I want. I'll be right back with the finished piece. Next, let's stamp a couple of ferns on the Whisper White. I'm going to ink them with Versamark. And then let's move these out of the way, and then add some clear embossing powder. I like my embossing powder in a tub, and those larger grains you see are rice. They keep the humidity from affecting my embossing powder. Okay, another little. And now let's heat emboss this. I'll be right back. Now that these are heat embossed, we're going to do a little ink resist by adding some Call Me Clover ink around. I want this to be really dark down in those areas in between, since this will be mostly light. And now let me take a moment to fussy cut these. I'm not going to cut these too closer than this. I just want to cut them loose from this extra paper. They're easier to handle. But I actually want the green border, normally like you would leave a white border around, and then just give the paper a little wiggle as you go around the fronds. Adds a little texture. Again, you're not cutting right up to the edge of the embossed piece. You're leaving a little bit of that green. It'll add some more interest on the card this way. And I'm turning my paper, not the scissors. I don't know if you can tell that it's my empty hand that is turning. And let's do the other one. For the sentiment, we're going to use a greeting from Itty Bitty Greetings. It's a 2-pack of great sentiments in the catalog. Let me set this aside. I need a piece of basic black, and since I'm embossing, I'm using my embossing buddy and the Versamark. And then some white embossing powder. And again, you'll see some larger chunks because I do have the rice in this powder as well. Let me sprinkle this back in and hop off to heat emboss, and then we'll come back for assembling. Okay, let's bring all the pieces in. I've got a lovely lipstick base and a Whisper White matte, and then this piece that we started with. I'm going to adhere these two together with a little multi-purpose glue. When you're doing a narrow mat, you need to use the glue instead of dimensionals so that the pieces are close enough to each other that you can see the difference. Sometimes, otherwise, at least in a photograph, you miss the subtle layering. And we're going to adhere this piece also with multi-purpose glue. Okay, now I have my label here, and I have some of the leaf ribbon. I have already, it comes on a spool. I have already added adhesive to this. My recommendation is to use glue dots on the back of the leaves, and that'll make it easy to adhere. Okay, now I want some dimensionals on the back of this piece. Don't be afraid to be generous with your dimensionals. Now I like to start my positioning and then add my other pieces in before I adhere it. So, I don't know why I put the dimensionals away. I need both of these pieces, and we're going to layer them. So, add a little glue in between, and then a little bit here on the back. And these are going to sit up in here. With a daisy right on top. And these are going to hang over the edge. Okay. And next I want a dimensional on the back of this one. And a couple of dimensionals on this last one. Okay, now let's pull this up and take the backing off of these now that I have all of my pieces where I want them. Oop, fingers. Okay, let's put this out of the way and move the ribbon out of the way. I have some of the Happiness Blooms enamel dots and some clear faceted gems. Let's put these in here. Oops, almost forgot my sentiment. It was hiding under here. Going to tuck that right down here in the corner. I seem to have brought everything lower than I had intended. That happens. Let's see if we can make that unhappen here. Okay, almost. Oops. Okay, move that up just a little bit. And now let's see. Okay, and there we have it. A little daisy lane in a bright, lovely lipstick and some Call Me Clover. Thanks for stopping by. This was Sara Levin, the Artful Inker at theartfulinker.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and then hop on over to my website, theartfulinker.com, and shop for your Stampin' Up! Supplies. Bye. Have a great day.